So welcome everyone to session number 2 of 4 here on mobile app development for recruiters. Again, my name is Alex Gaber. Work as a day job with Layer 7 Technologies, helping enterprises open up APIs. My main job is to help provide sample apps and build sample functionality based on those APIs to show what types of mobile apps can be built, and working here through Maracana for Apex to help you guys recruit more mobile app developers. Thank you to several of the people who shot me some emails after Monday's call and gave me some feedback. I'll stick to the overall agenda as we'd planned with Apex from the beginning, but I'm gonna add some more stuff here later today just to go into depth on some of the things that sound like will really be useful to helping you guys place more candidates and jobs. So just the quick agenda here. Oops, wrong button. Want to make sure this is the agenda that we set up for today. Again, I look forward to making this interactive and getting questions on the fly, making sure I'm being as helpful as possible to what you guys need. So, and thank you everyone today. It looks like they're nicely on mute. So I'll just leave the entire bridge unmuted. So if you want to jump in, ask a question, please feel free to unmute and speak up. I'm happy to go into more depth on anything here. And overall, I'm just trying to kind of provide an overall view here of mobile developers. And I'm happy to go into more depth. So just please ask me on any topics you want to see. So kind of main high-level agenda for today, just look at, why mobile, what is it, what's happening, what is BYOD, then secondly, go more into depth on what we started to look at on Tuesday, which is the native versus hybrid versus HTML5 debate, and going through some of the nuances of those. And today I'll kind of cover more of how to classify those developers and understand, based on what kind of rec your client is given, what types of developers would fit that the best. Cover a little bit about the capabilities per platform, and then I'll also dig more into the developer abilities that are required, like what skills are you looking for, and what types of developers would make the best fit for these. And so I'll just kind of start going through this, but again, I'm happy to be flexible here and go into more depth on things that are important for you guys. So one, just kind of go back a little bit of history. BYOD, it's complicated. And so BYOD stands for Bring Your Own Device. Probably most people here have experienced it, do it themselves. I've heard of this, obviously. But it harkens back to when 15 years ago at a company, you would get your new computer and you were not able to install anything on your computer. The IT department would lock it down. It's a company provisioned device. It would maybe block certain websites like eBay or Facebook. You would not be able to install any new software on that computer. So that's the history we're coming from here, and that's the expectation that a lot of corporate enterprise IT departments bring to the table, is that, hey, if people are going to be calling us on a Saturday morning because something broke, we need to be able to have the control to and know what's on that device, what's been installed, and be able to fix it as quickly as possible so you can get your job done as fast as possible. So that's the kind of history here of that and where we are right now. So when we bring in these mobile devices, the story is pretty much the same. It's not much different here, that we still have an operating system. The end users still want to install their other apps, and those apps may interact with the operating system. They may take data. They may be malware on the other on that device and steal data from those other applications. So that's kind of this whole concept here, and a lot of us driving this. And obviously, the problem is much worse with Android than iOS, but we see that problem continuing, and it's just a growing trend. So it's something to look at and understand about mobile and how it's being embraced and or infiltrating enterprise IT. But we do know that BYOD is here to stay, and it's driving productivity overall. Just a quick quote I found, people who surf Facebook and YouTube throughout the day stay more productive. Probably everyone on this call has an email-enabled device. we all check it on Saturdays, we all check it on Sundays. We're staying up to date. Whether that email comes in at 11 p.m. or 11 a.m., the clock starts ticking as soon as we receive it, and we need to respond. So we kind of, we used to be called a crackberry addict. Now is, just a general worker, and that's kind of the expectation of all of us. Probably have a little bit more flex work schedules, but we know that we're always kind of constantly on. And so what does that mean for mobile apps? Is that these apps need to have better security controls, and that we're opening up more holes, more usage, more mobility, often leads to more security holes. And as mentioned, Android is for that. So just want to give the quick state of the market for BYOD and kind of what's gotten us to a lot of this, because some of the developers you may be hiring, and I assume you'll probably see an uptick in this trend, is security on Android. And it'll be a bigger and bigger issue as Android proliferates and grows. But we'll see with iOS and Windows as well, and even BlackBerry, because it used to be that BlackBerry was a tied down, locked ecosystem. One company would deploy a BlackBerry enterprise server. Every employee's device was connected to that one central server, and the company IT department controlled that. But now we're not seeing that anymore. All this has kind of been blasted open, and that's kind of all this security concerns around BYOD is because of that. So the next thing we want to get into, and we started to last week, was the native versus hybrid versus what other debate. And it's hopefully last week I went over those classifications. I'll run through them again today, just to make sure, because I know for myself initially it was very confusing, and which was which. What do these different platforms do? How do they fit into all of this? So why the debate? I'm going to cover today. What stories are coming out in the news? What kind news that maybe the CIO is reading that the developer is not reading, and how that'll affect possibly the types of technologies they're using. What are the pros and cons of these different mobile app classifications, and what functionality would typically require or drive the need for a full native application. So just a quick history here. 1 year ago, Brett Taylor, CTO of Facebook, was on stage at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona and said, "We think this experience can be as good or even better than the native platforms." And this was Facebook's goal for a good couple years. And then in September this year at TechCrunch Disrupt in San Francisco, Zuckerberg on stage, first time on stage since the IPO, comes out and says their biggest mistake so far was that they use HTML5 rather than native. And there's some very low level technical reasons why they did that and what happened there, and I'll cover some of that as well. But something that is just in the news, and unfortunately it caused a lot of it killed a lot of the momentum around HTML5 for mobile. But it's not over at all, and a lot of enterprises are still doing it. And so I just want to make sure to address this and kind of bring this knowledge so you're aware of it, and can address it as well and say, well, look, they were doing it. It's some low-level technical details because Facebook's so robust. There's so much data happening there. It did not make sense for them, but for most other applications, HTML5 can be just fine. And another way to kind of understand this that I really like as a great metaphor for hybrid HTML5 apps native versus full native is comparing that HTML5 hybrid app with like buying a suit off the rack at the store. For anyone we know, tailored clothing. Everyone's bodies are different, just like every app's needs are different. And when we go to the store, we get one off the rack. It fits pretty well. It gets us 90% of that fit that we're looking for, and we say, okay, is it worth that extra $200 to have the tailor, bring in the inseam or the back shoulders, whatever? Suddenly you're looking at a couple extra $100 to get it just the right fit. Do you even bother starting with that off-the-rack suit, or you just get one fully custom built? And it's a similar approach with mobile apps, and this came from Mozilla.org just a few months ago. So it's a good kind of way to look at the whole market here of what level of tailoring, what level of custom and perfection do you need to achieve here, and what makes sense. So that's kind of a question to ask as you're looking at HTML5 versus mobile. And this here is the standard Gartner hype cycle chart. It's just a sample one. You may or may not be familiar with this. Gartner talks about any new technology comes out, everyone gets excited, it's in the news, everyone starts hiring for those people. I mean, even equate this to like something like Node.js today. You probably hear about that too. Um, and so you hear these everything's exciting. Right now, we're kind of just past the peak of inflated expectations, I feel, with HTML5. We're moving down that curve because of what Zuckerberg said, because of what I really see as software development managers have realized about some of the shortcomings of HTML5 for native mobile. So we're kind of getting down here, but eventually we'll hit this plateau of productivity. There are a lot of tools, vendors out there like Sencha, like Appcelerator, the community around PhoneGap, and they're building all these fixes. They're bridging all these problems to make HTML5 as good as native. That's some of these. I've met some startups recently, and that's their goal. They're saying we're just making HTML5 for mobile as good as native. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to make a lot of money doing it. So that's kind of where we're at now as far as where this kind of the world sits with HTML5 for mobile and how it works. And so I can even jump in today. I was thinking one of the emails I got from one of you guys was, hey, can we look at a little native code, just see what the developers are seeing? So I'll even just do a quick 1-minute demo today and show you guys even how you can build an app yourself in a couple minutes, just using HTML5 and PhoneGap, so you get it. So this is what I covered on Tuesday, just the various classifications, and again, just want to make sure these are pretty honed in your mind. We have mobile web, which is nothing installed on the phone. It's just mobile a domain name.com. A lot of enterprises may have offered this. They may offer just a simple mobile website, they'll call it, for access into the backend system. And that's where a lot of the mobile apps still are today. And I've been seeing it still in e-commerce. There's a lot of still just done mobile web. They don't want to deal with the App Store. The App Store approval is often a big hindrance to getting things installed. And then one other thing to realize too is that as soon as you cross that line to being native, you're under the guidelines of what Apple requires. So Apple requires that they take 30% of all in-app purchases of the revenue. So if you're Farmville and you're selling those cows or whatever, and if someone buys $100 worth, you have to pay Apple a $30 commission on that. So that's kind of a deal breaker sometimes from crossing that line and going native, because you don't want to be under those Apple strict guidelines for what that means. So it's still probably going to be a viable deployment model for years to come until those types of restrictions are lifted by Apple. And then hybrid native, I'll actually show you, why not? I'll show you a quick PhoneGap app today. From a lot of the emails I got, it sounds like everyone will understand what's going on. So I think it'll be worthwhile for you guys to see some of what the developers see and just kind of understand their world a bit more. And I think if you can talk a little bit more shop to developers, it'll always only make you a better consultant and advisor to these people as they're considering a career change in a new job. So pros and cons for HTML5, as I mentioned, there's some gaps, there's performance issues, things don't move, they're less snappy, the apps themselves, but you get all cross platforms, and it's easier, quicker way to address BYOD because you can provide those apps in somewhat of a more secure fashion to those end users. And then hybrid native runtime, which would be like Sencha or Appcelerator, is going to give you full native UI controls, so the buttons and the scrollers all look exactly as you'd expect them on an iOS or an Android. There's nothing different about it, but they do use a framework themselves that will add performance overhead. And then the last one here is full native. So this would be writing an Objective-C on Apple or in Java on Android. You'll get the best performance. These are probably the most high-level performing apps out there would be full native. But then that comes with a lot of headaches as well. You have to rebuild it completely. Sometimes it's called porting an app from one platform to another, but it's really, rebuilding it from scratch in Java if you started with iPhone and you built an Objective-C. So that's kind of the big thing, and that's where I myself, 2.5 years ago, I built some iPhone apps, and suddenly my friends are like, hey, run this on my Android? And I said, oh, no, I don't have an Android. Well, why not? Oh, I'm working on that. And it just became such a headache for me to have to kind of build it for both each time. I said, okay, well, I'm really going to attack this HTML5 PhoneGap thing because I want to just build it once and have one code base mainly, and work on that and not have to deal with two versions of it each time, and even now with BlackBerry or Windows not support those, which are supported out of the box by PhoneGap. So these are just, again, these classifications, and want to make sure, again, it's clear on that. And why don't I go ahead and here, so I'm going to kind of talk about cross-platform native HTML5 because it's getting a lot of traction. You'll probably hear about it a lot. There's some things out there that are trying to make it much better. And I'll even just jump over here, and I'm going to kind of show you some quick. I'm going to use a tool here that's great for beginners. It's called Tigsy. You may have heard of it. They do a lot of hackathons and get themselves out there. And so we'll just go ahead and create a very simple new app here. I'm going to show you how to do this in minutes at most. So I'll call this Apex, and now it's loading up the app builder for me. And here in the editor, it just takes a minute to load. And I can then now have basically an HTML5 native app ready to go. And it's just super, super quick. So I'll just show you here how some of these parts fit together. Because based on the questions some of you emailed me, I definitely think this will be useful to you. So here I can see in my project I've got a start screen. Here's how it starts out. And this is your first page of a mobile app. And what Tigsy does, it's great, is it just lets you, let's make it lighter colors here. And I'll probably make this look easier than it is, but they do have a lot of tutorials if you want to try this tool out. And email me if you want to get a free promo code to a pro account, because I'm friends with the guys. But text here, we'll just say Apex sample app. And here, and so what Tigsy's great here is what all these things are here. It'll look like you're almost in like a prototyping or wireframing tool, but this is actually going to create live code. So it's different than a lot of the other tools out there. So let's say I just want to create a button that says, maybe show image, and I can go ahead and grab, I'll go ahead and just drop an image in here if we want. But, well, either way, I just created this quick mobile app, and I want to drop in a date picker because I'm going to show you how that works with jQuery as well. So now we just got a button here and a date picker. Save this here. And what's great here, so this is an HTML5 PhoneGap app. So what you're seeing here on my screen here, it looks like it's got a phone around it, but all that is just a graphic. This is just an iframe of a web browser, and that's all a native HTML5 app is. It is just an iframe on the phone, and then it wraps it using PhoneGap to let it act native and do some other native things, but it really is just a web browser within an app. So you could literally take a website and wrap it up with PhoneGap and have an app that is just a website. And I've done that before, and people do that. Some apps you have may just be that as well. So here I can hit test here, and it just loads it up in a mobile frame. And I can see here's my app. If I click on the date picker, it pulls up this date picker. And now you can see here it's doing mouse overs in my web, but it would not do that on mobile because we don't have mouse overs anymore. And that's one of those little nuances about mobile versus web. And so this is just a standard date picker here that's using jQuery mobile UI framework. Now Sencha will have one that looks just like this, but a little different, and theirs is a little prettier. It's a little slicker looking. If you've ever pulled up a date picker on your iPhone or Android, and it's using a full native, that looks totally different. So here it's just one sample here, and what I can even do here is say export this here, and what they've done is basically have PhoneGap running on their servers, so I can actually create an Android APK file right from here, and that's basically just running that code, and I'll show you in a quick second here. And this is just using this is a very graphical editor, but I am able to get in here and change the code if I wanted to. They also offer an export just to raw HTML5, and we'll see here in a second. It should be pretty quick to create that Android file, but then I'd be able to run that file on an Android device. So as soon as that one's done, looks like their server's a little slow today. But that's basically just the creating of a very, very simple HTML5 PhoneGap app. And there's other ways to do this, but this is just a tool that kind of makes it all simple for you. And I just want to kind of show this to run you through, like, here's a sample mobile app using HTML5, here's what it looks like. And one other big thing to mention here that's kind of a giveaway as you're looking at apps and as you want to kind of build your own expertise here in native versus HTML5 is if I create a new page here, and we'll just call it page 2. In this page here now, I'm probably going to want to have this be like the second page. So I'll probably want to have a back button. Now the back button you really would only see on iOS apps. You would not see those on a back button on a fully native Android app because every Android app has its own back button on the hardware, on the phone itself. So as an app developer, you wouldn't need to put a back button in there. So it's kind of a giveaway if you see a back button that this app was built cross-platform using something like PhoneGap and jQuery Mobile, which we're using here. So that's kind of a quick giveaway. And I would just say start screen. I'm going to say go to page 2, and then we just create an event. So the beauty of this is coming from a web developer world. It makes it very simple. So mobile button on a click. I want to navigate to a page, and I'm going to go to page 2, and I'm going to say let's do a flip, and we'll add that event, and now we can go ahead and test it. And just like that, we get our, move this down here. There's my preview. Okay, so now we can see go to page 2. I tap on that. It should do a nice flip, and it went to that second page. Now I can click on back, and it goes back there. But you can see that flip action going. Now you'll notice. So this is a hybrid app. So you still get that kind of screen effects. Now here's where the challenge to developers comes in. If this is installed on, say, an older Android device, this flip here would look really clunky and really slow. But if it's on a nice fancy new Nexus or a Galaxy S3, it would look really quick. So anyways, I want to just kind of show you guys a quick example here so you kind of have a feeling of what this means and how it works. And I'll also just go ahead and crank that out as HTML5. This did give me my APK file. So this could be installed, this could be uploaded to the Android App Store right now. And then here would be the HTML code for it. And show that really quick. I'm just showing this because I know a couple of you guys who emailed me, several did, seem like you were much more interested in kind of knowing what are the developers seeing? How do I talk to the developers better? How do I understand them? And so here I'd be able to go edit this and see just the HTML. And I just want to point out here, just so you see, this is as simple as it is. It just starts, it says, okay, open up start screen.html. This is the first page of that mobile app. So the mobile app is as simple as a very, very basic HTML5. And we say, okay, load up this page next. And I want to see what that one looks like. So, as a developer here, if you're hiring for someone like for Sencha or for PhoneGap and jQuery Mobile, this is more what they see. They're just doing standard old HTML, JavaScript, CSS stuff, and this is their app. So this is just one example of a hybrid native app, and you probably have some of these installed on your phones and use them. Okay, so that is an example here, back to the PowerPoint, of a cross-platform native HTML5 app. And I think it's important that you can say, hey, I've seen how those are built. You understand that, hey, that was just, as we saw there, just an HTML file. We had those buttons. That calendar thing was using jQuery Mobile, which just gives us all those little widgets, we'll call them, or little, the buttons, the scrollers, the navigation tabs, like everything you'd expect. And then PhoneGap wraps that to create a native APK file. So we just kind of went through that quick process in like 5 minutes. But now you kind of see how these parts fit together to create a native app. So I'll kind of go into that a little further. So beyond this, what I just showed you, I use jQuery Mobile there, which is just this one. And this is just another small sampling, but I just threw in some other logos here, just kind of give us a better landscape of all these ones out there. And all these different frameworks out there. There are a ton, and they're only growing right now. And all of these have somewhat slightly different nuances to them. They're attacking certain problems more than others, and so they have their pros and cons. But I'm sure you're starting to see some of these requests, and this just kind of give you guys examples as well. Like if you see a developer with experience using Trigger, they're probably a pretty good developer, and for them to go pick up PhoneGap stuff's easy. Or if they've been doing a lot of Accelerator, they're probably a good JavaScript person. Picking up Sencha would be easy for them. And these are the kinds of skills that you may want to look for in these types of technologies. I'm sure you guys have your own way to classify things, but these are just some sample ways to find. There's TIGs up there as well. All the various different mobile frameworks out there that help developers get from point A to B that are not going full native but are crossing that gap. So beyond these different platforms, so I just showed you Tigsy and how that works and how that's using jQuery mobile. But again, it gives you the raw, once you use it as just an app builder, you can get out that raw HTML code. So a lot of these, just to put in perspective for you, back in like 1995, 96, some guy said, hey, Microsoft is going to need a way to let people easily build websites. So they built this thing called Front Page. There's a book about it. That was their entire goal from day one, is to go sell the company to Microsoft. So a lot of these mobile app companies are doing the same thing. If it's, AppCelerator is even in talks with Microsoft, I read recently. I know that Microsoft paid them to support Windows 8 Phone as one of the platforms they can deploy to, and they're even in talks to buy them. So these frameworks, if you look back like 15 years at where we were with Dreamweaver that Adobe bought as in Macromedia, where we were with Front Page. There's all these various kind of different tool sets out there to help make these things easier, and we'll probably see some consolidation here in the market over the next year. But it's just kind of to bring that back, and it's definitely a parallel kind of thing happening to what happened with those developer tools in the late 90s and early 2000s for web. That's now all happening again with mobile. So that's kind of why you're seeing so many platforms. We'll probably see consolidation. We'll see some more acquisitions beyond, PhoneGap was acquired by Adobe, but we'll probably see more of those. And then I also want to touch on the
I have a question, Alex.
yeah.
Can all of these frameworks be used for any of the different platforms, or are there certain ones that are better for different platforms? And also, is iOS, can you use any of these to develop iOS apps, or are there specific frameworks that only work for iOS?
Yeah, great question. So they all will, a lot of these will, if you call up AppCelerator and say which ones do you support, they'll probably tell you all. And so a lot of these frameworks start out when they're scrappy startup out of a garage. They'll simply try and they'll start with a goal it's called WORA, Write Once, Run Anywhere, WORA. And they want to be able to deploy on all the platforms. And so, like with AppCelerator, for years, they only supported iOS and Android. Even though, like on all their marketing materials, they say, oh, we're full cross-platform, we support all the mobile platforms. For years, they were just Android and iOS. And I think now they do Windows Phone 8 because Microsoft kind of helped them. And I think I know that BlackBerry, I talked to the guy like a month ago, and he said they sort of support it now. So, any of these, all these frameworks any of them are doing is basically reverse engineering each mobile operating system and then creating kind of a normalized way to access this, like the camera on each different platform. They had to reverse engineer how iOS did it, how Android did it, and then let you as a developer write one line of code that says use camera, and it fires off to those 5 different ways that they built to do it. So a lot of these cross-platform frameworks will start out from day one attacking iOS and Android. Often I've seen even iOS first. Like another one here, these guys just got funding. They have a really good product, but it's only iOS right now. And he said, oh yeah, we're doing Android soon. But they're just helping make it easier to get HTML5 on iOS today. They don't even say it on here. Okay, features. But a lot of these frameworks will start out with just iOS and Android, and then add the other ones as you go. So if we go to like build.PhoneGap, I'll even just see which ones they're supporting right now. I'll just sign in here really quick. And so that's the thing. They always will start out that way, and it's really based on market share. You just have to go build for what's out there. So let's see, my Niners newsreader here. It looks like we've got iOS, Windows, HP WebOS, which is Palm, Android, BlackBerry, and what is WGZ? I don't even know. So that's another one that PhoneGap is supporting now as well. Well,
are there any really popular frameworks that we should be aware of? I guess PhoneGap, HTML5, jQuery Mobile. Which ones should we keep on in the front of our mind to look for on resume?
Yeah, I'd say PhoneGap is by far the main one. because they're the leaders. That's why Adobe bought them. It became an Apache project called Cordova. So if a developer is trying to be slick, they'll call it Cordova. Uh, it's if they have experience with PhoneGap, they can build for all these platforms. Um, Now, as far as the frameworks go, that's going to be the best one because it shows that they've gone kind of full cross-platform. And they should probably say on their resume, like, built this for iOS, Android, and BlackBerry, because they'll probably want to have that noted for themselves. But yeah, Titanium, and that's the thing. Like, I even thought to just show today, like developer.apple.com. It's a whole other thing you have to learn how to use to build an Apple app. Yeah, and so someone just asked another question. Is there a generic name for these platforms as well? These are just called cross-platform frameworks. That's all they'd be called. It's just maybe mobile, but a cross-platform framework. And typically you just call it cross-platform, X-platform, and that's typically it. HTML5 for native, native hybrid apps, all these kinds of things have been labeled it. But PhoneGap's really the leader by far. And AppCelery may tell you that they're the leader. They're a much different business model. They basically take on projects and build it on their platform, but they don't have kind of the open community that PhoneGap does. If you're another thing, so just because you guys, I'm just trying to make this even more relevant to you guys. A great place to go look and recruit developers is on GitHub. If you want to go find like who are good developers and who's doing cool stuff, so here's PhoneGap. I'm following this project. So you can even just go here and see who contributors are to the PhoneGap project on GitHub. And it's something I've heard this called developer profiling, and kind of in the API world, when developer registers for a company's developer program, how do you profile that developer? Is it some college kid just messing around, or is it a serial entrepreneur who's probably going to go build the next successful app on your platform? How do you evaluate who those people are? So one way people are doing is going to GitHub and seeing who's on here. So we go to members. Okay, so this is probably just the team that builds GitHub. But you can start to if you're prospecting for recruits and trying to find these active developers. I mean, I would suggest PhoneGap is a great place to start for cross-platform mobile app developers. And then just going through here and going through, okay, Brian's kind of the head of it. Let's see who's following Brian on GitHub here. And you can see, all these kinds of information about him, organizations he's part of, and that's how you can kind of profile these developers and find good ones, and see how many commits they have. But that's a tough thing, and it may come from the companies that are doing the hiring. They may have already decided on a platform, or they may be, if they're looking for a mobile architect, then you need someone with experience in all of these, or having dealt with all of them. But those are hopefully some of the buzzwords to look for, or keywords. Does that answer that question? Any other thoughts? Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. I mean, it sounds like, a lot of what I can help you guys with is where to go find these developers beyond just kind of the overview here of the technologies. So that's what I was going to kind of do in the last slide here, in the last part of today, is how do you go find these developers? Where are they hiding? And how do you engage with them? And how do you build, because you guys have a tough job. You guys have a very tough job. So that was, I was going to kind of go more in depth on that in the last slide here. So why don't I keep kind of plugging along and then get into that. So just kind of mention some other technologies that good mobile developers should have some experience with. Our mobile backend as a service platforms. So here I just put, I kind of bundled a couple here. There are several others out there, and these are going to come more from the kind of progressive, cutting-edge type web space, not just kind of as deep legacy enterprise systems. But companies like Parsons, StackMob are good to understand, and if you see these on a developer's resume, or you've gone to their website and you've gone to the forums on StackMob and you saw some active developers on there that sounds like they're doing some pretty cool stuff, and you go look them up on LinkedIn and they see they're independent. That could be a good prospect for you, and a good place to hunt for these types of developers. But they're doing mobile backend. So what they do is like, as a developer, as an example, I have a side project app called Be Involved In, and it helps parents be involved in their child's education. And it just lets teachers schedule and create homework assignments so that it fires off text message notifications to the parents and lets them know, hey, your kid has an essay due on Huckleberry Finn. It's due in 3 days. Talk about it with them. Get involved in it. Help them out. And to do that app, I needed a way to store the parents' phone numbers securely because a teacher, for privacy laws, cannot see a parent's phone numbers. I need a way to fire off those text messages and or fire them off as push notifications if the parent installs the app as well. And so I needed a mobile backend to do that. I needed a way to register users, which are the teachers and the parents, and then classify those users, give them access to certain parts of the app. And I need a way to push out those notifications, for push notifications, and also just be the data store, the online data store, so parents could, if they didn't have a smartphone, they could log into a website and put in their phone number and say, yes, sign me up for notifications. My child's in this class with this teacher. And that's what these platforms do. Sometimes enterprises are basically building these things, and what these startups have done is said, hey, all these different enterprises are building this themselves. Let's go build standard platforms that they'll all basically need. They all could use. And that's what they're doing. They're all doing pretty well. And that's another thing, just kind of have a good knowledge of is mobile developers working with these backends, understanding the concept of user registration in the apps. Seeing these things on their resume will show that they've got that experience. And then I just want to quickly touch on here, like what these developers, coming from web to desktop, and or client-side application to web or desktop client apps to mobile apps. The big kind of things that kind of shell shock a lot of developers is a limited screen real estate. A lot of times I'm an advisor to a small startup here, and the guy building the app is doing he's a JavaScript guru, and the app that he built though is basically taking the web and putting it on a mobile. Well, it looks great on a Samsung Galaxy Note 2, which is the phablet, the bigger phone, which the boss there has. But then when you load it onto, say, a Galaxy S2, a smaller Android screen, you can't see anything. It's all really small. You can barely discern which buttons to tap with your finger. You'll accidentally tap on the wrong button because they're so close together. And that's kind of a big transition here where you want to look at, see some sort of UX for mobile experience on their resume, because it's a big deal. It's a big change. The developers, took me a while. It takes everyone a while, and we're all still learning, right? But understanding like, hey, mobile's going to be a subset of functionality, and I need to, really rethink the user interface for mobile. I can't just have 50 buttons on a screen anymore or 50 options. I may need to break those out across 5, 7, 10 different screens on mobile to make sure it's easy for the user to use. So looking for that mobile UX experience is going to be probably a big drive to having a more successful mobile app developer placement. And then, yeah, as I kind of mentioned, it's a subset. And another thing to just kind of consider here that's good to see on mobile app developers is understanding the cell phone networks, because they do introduce a lot more complications to it. I love hearing there's a story of I have a friend who works at a mobile analytics company, and they went to go help another company, and the developer there would literally tap a button on the mobile app that he was building and throw the phone into a microwave and slam the microwave door shut, because the microwave acted as a cell phone signal blocker, so it would just take the phone offline right away, because he wanted to see what happens when it goes offline. And mobile app testing is another whole kind of area here. I don't know if you guys have gotten too many requests for it yet, because it's still a very most mobile apps are just kind of built shoot from the hip, or ready, fire, aim, as I've heard it called. Right? They're building it first, then tuning it, then fixing it later, which is part of the iterative startup kind of culture that drives these kinds of things. But testing and Quality assurance is still a relatively immature space for mobile. There's a lot of startups getting into it now, but it's a big deal. And so seeing any developers who talk about, hey, I have experience with offline, dealing with cell phone network latency on apps or app performance management for mobile. New Relic's a big web performance management company. They just threw their hat in the ring this week and said, we've got a whole new mobile offering for mobile app performance management. So we're going to start to see a lot more of that. It's a good thing to see on a mobile app developer resume that at least they've dealt with debugging of mobile apps. They've worked with companies like Device Anywhere or some of these other ones that basically have a farm, a farm, we'll call it, but it's just basically, I've seen them, and PhoneGap's offices have this. One whole wall is like 100 different phones, all wired in. So you can basically just, to one computer, so you can test your apps on all 60 of them, but on real live phones. And that's a big problem with mobile. There's a lot of testing still has to be done manually to really see how it works. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to cover here, and I think this is kind of going to keep kind of honing in on what you guys really want out of me, which is developer capabilities analysis. What skills make a good mobile developer? How do we look for server-side or front-end skills? How do we distinguish which is what? Where to find these developers and how to approach them? And so I kind of wanted to just kind of dig in today and say, kind of cover like, where are the developers? How do you guys as recruiters approach them and say, and be taken seriously? Is that, and just, I just heard someone drop off the call and make sure, is this going to be useful content as well?
Yes, it will.
Okay, so I'll just kind of...
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I got some emails from you guys, so I want to kind of go ahead and just, switch gears and directly attack this stuff. So, there's different things here, and it comes back from like, I also do trainings for a big company where they're having me. It's almost like this level. And these guys, I'm training guys that are coming from server side. They've been writing Java code for 20 years, and they've never touched client side anything, or they may made a basic interface, and now they're basically said, your job's gone unless you do mobile, and they have to go switch gears. And they come from a Java background, but it's often tricky and it's tough. And just like I kind of have seen, a lot of people who get successful in their jobs, they need to kind of have the ability to wear lots of different hats, and it's kind of the IT generalist, maybe they were called 10 years ago. But someone who's just a technically good hacker and has skills would be a great. We'll probably pick it up quickly. And as you kind of probably have assessed here, like I showed with this slide, this is still just 1/10 of the ecosystem. There's a lot of tools, a lot of frameworks out there, and one developer, any developer who takes a new job is going to come to that job with their own tool belt. They know, they may be some app accelerator whiz, and they know how to make it actually work really well. Even though everyone in the company has dismissed it, they couldn't figure it out. Someone there's good with it. So these different skills will make a good mobile app developer. And I don't know if you guys have, and so to find as you're recruiting for developers, and there's actually an article I meant to pull it up here, but there's a kind of a concept, and I was even in a developer evangelist luncheon yesterday, and this came up there. It's just the question was asked: is that are hackathons a great place for recruiters? And I go to hackathons. I used to go to a lot of them. Now I have to run them, and they're not as fun anymore when you have to run them. But I would get approached by recruiters all the time. I used to say to people like, "Oh yeah, every time I go to a hackathon, it pretty much was this way. I'd get offered, either as a recruiter or an internal person at a company, say, hey, if you're looking for a job, come talk to us. Yeah, I'm sitting at a table. Actually, a story here. I'm sitting at a table, and just kind of talking shop with some people at the beginning of the hackathon day. We're kind of drinking coffee, and we're all just kind of talking shop. And this one guy says to me, "Hey, why don't you come work for our company?" And it was a cool San Francisco startup. I said, and the way he kind of said it was very confident. I said, "What?" I said, "What? Are you the CEO or something?" And he says, "No, I'm the CTO." Of a very successful company, and he was, and he tried to recruit me, and I had another job, so I didn't do it. But I was like, that's a great effort on their part, and it's smart to go recruit that way because it's very innocent. We're talking shop. I already kind of got to know the person a little bit, and was friendly, and it's tough as a recruiter to come in, especially if you guys are kind of external recruiters, but it's definitely possible, and you guys have a lot of good opportunities for developers that they'll want to know about as long as you kind of approach it in the right way. So this article here just talks about hackathons as recruiting events. And if you ever, great resource for this is hackweekends.com. And not that everyone on this call may want to go get involved in hackathons, but if you're recruiting developers and you can tell them, just mention like, hey, I was at a hackathon, and I saw that you've been at 10 of them, and I saw you won 5 first place prizes, and you tell a developer like, oh yeah, and I was at one too. They're really intense, and that makes me respect and acknowledge how much hard work it is to get a prize at a hackathon. That'll really ingratiate you with the developer more, and they'll say, okay, this person's cool. Like they're gonna go, they gave up some of their weekend to go check this out. They want to understand my world. They're not just here to make a quick buck and place me at a company and a job that I don't that may not be right for me. But they're willing. This person's willing to take the time to understand me a little bit, the culture, and know that okay, it would be good. I'd be happy to work at Microsoft, even though I maybe have only done open source stuff. But because Microsoft has some new open source initiative, and this is like the new cool group in the company, and it'll fit my desires. So if you can kind of start talking to that kind of stuff, I think developers will be way more receptive. So you can see this list of hackathons coming up. I mean, I'm helping do one. I'm flying to Los Angeles tomorrow to help AT&T guys run one right here. AT&T Aspire Mobile App Hackathon, LA. I'll be there as an organizer. But you can see we got Arkansas, Belgium, Provo, Utah. Oh, that one happened already. Sorry, Atlanta, Bloomington, Indiana, I think is where that is, and Australia. I mean, they're all over. And this is just this weekend. Paris, right? And there's obviously 2 or 3 in San Francisco every weekend. But if you can make it out to one of these, and I'll even show you guys. I'll put this link in the PowerPoint as well. But these kinds of things are great ways for recruiters to really understand the culture, and because I mean, look, honestly, I get hit up by recruiters once or twice a week looking to hire for good companies, and I can sniff out a lame recruiter instantly. And if they come to me though, and they're like, hey, I checked out your LinkedIn profile. It looks like a good fit for this job because you have ABC skills. And then I noticed that you did this and you had this accomplishment. And I think that would be a good fit for you at this company because of these 2 reasons. And when a recruiter comes to me with that, then I'm much more receptive, and I'll read their email, and I can tell it's not just like some cut and paste email that they spammed out to a list that they maybe bought from a hackathon of developers there. And so if you can, just add that one little flavor of custom engagement, custom relationship building, people, they'll believe you in that. It'll work well. So hackathons are kind of a great way to just kind of get involved and see what's happening these things. And a lot of these hackathons too, they have like I have to present 5 minutes to this hackathon this weekend. And I just probably talk about mobile apps integrating APIs and some technical nuances of it. And so people go to these things to learn, to get free. They're mostly free, and that's why people go to these things. So hackathons are a great place to go hit up and start recruiting developers. And then I also even just flipped to one of the nice recruiters there. I won't call him out by name, but he lives here in San Francisco, emailed me, and I said, hey, and he said, yeah, I'm going to App World today. And I said, yeah, I'd be going, but I'm doing this training this morning here instead. And I had some calls, but I'll go this afternoon. And then I said, hey, there's also this pretty cool event tonight that would be for developers, where you'll probably be able to find a few. I sent it. I won't put them on the spot by looking it up, but it's on my meetup. And so these kinds of events, if getting out in the world as a recruiter, I meet recruiters at these events all the time, and they're savvy recruiters. They're like out there. They're like, they're there to learn. They're interested in they're recruiting mobile developers. They want to learn, and then they also just want to see what people are out there. So let's see, is this it? No, Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Here it is. Apps World Meetup on monetization. So what kind of people go to this event? I want to go learn how to, I've got 10 little apps in the Android App Store. Most of them are free. I started charging for one. No one's bought it. How do I monetize better? It's a question that plagues a lot of app developers, and I'm sure you guys can probably pick up, a lot of these developers who maybe quit their job at Google a year ago, decide they're going to go build 20 apps and become a millionaire, and it's not quite working out for them because that's a dirty little secret of apps, is that independent apps barely make any money. These are the kinds of events that these people would go to. So I flipped this over to him. I said, hey, it's 5:30 tonight. It's a mixer event, cocktail party. Couldn't be any easier to talk to people. And it'll probably be a lot of developers who are there trying to figure out how to monetize their apps. And so if you can, kind of hone in on these types of events, it's a great way to get out there, give out your card, and just say, hey, we work with a lot of, big enterprises that have really fat jobs. So if you kind of get tired of eating ramen, then and you want to like get a good day job for a while, let me know. We've got a lot of good opportunities for you, and I'd say that's a pretty good way to approach recruiting kind of in this modern age of developers. So that's kind of the offline approach, I'll call it, which is definitely hard work. It's a pain, and you as a recruiters have to go put yourself out there and meet these people. But you never know, you'll learn something, meet some interesting people, and have fun, get some free drinks. Another place to go look as well that developers would be good at, where you'll find these, it's this thing called Challenge Post. So what they do is online contests. So they run things like challenge.gov, which is all these government challenges, where again you can go identify these good developers who are competing in these things, who are trying to pull off this kind of side business thing full time, but they may be ready for a full time job, or they're doing this, they're just rock star developers. They go crank out something on the weekend, and then go back to their day job on Monday, but they may be open to something. So just so you can see how these work. It's like all these different challenges. Developers are signed up, so you can go find these developers on here and see which ones are active and which ones are good. And it'll show like, oh, I built this iOS app, and here's my demo. And then you can say, okay, and then you can contact them person and say, hey, saw that you won this event, saw you got a second place prize. Here's your, and I'm coming to you with the real prize. A great job. That kind of stuff I think is, developers will be receptive to that because you found them through a very organic path of who they are. And so I was trying to find if there's developers here, followers, but not developers. I think I have to sign in to see. So create your own account and do that. So these are just other venues and routes for finding developers. So beyond just kind of mobile stuff, I wanted to kind of cover that for you. I know we're kind of here to the top of the hour, and wanted to kind of just at least drop that information in here because that seemed like a lot of the questions people emailed me were about, where do we find these people? How do we get out there and get in front of them? So, Jill, are you on the line still?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, so I just saw there's one more question that came up. What are your thoughts on user groups? But Jill, I just want to I know we're at the top of the hour here. Jill, do you have questions? Is there an area here I can talk more about that you think would be really useful?
I think I guess what we just covered was actually pretty good, and I think that's probably a lot of what their one is. What are those other places? And you mentioned a few of the offline places. Meetup obviously is somewhat online as well. Are there online communities that you know of that developers maybe are a part of? I think Richard, he's our Java guy that works here. He's mentioned in the past things like freelancer.com, I think, hackerspaces.org, things like that. Are there places like that you know of that may be online communities as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's there's tons of different places to go, and those are hackerspaces.org. You mentioned there's Hacker News, but it's really news.y Combinator. No doubt, like I know if even like API craft. I know that, like, I kind of, my day job's in this niche, the API business, and I know that even like we'll go in, like, so there's, yes, definitely. And what I'll say for user groups is they are all very fluid, and like one day, Stack Overflow, um, maybe the best place to go to find these people, going to places like Quora and seeing who's answering the technical dev questions on there. All this is kind of hard work for you guys. So, with that disclaimer, it's tougher prospecting, but you'll find these little hidden nuggets in these online user groups. Definitely, it just takes time, and you need to kind of like get a little bit engaged yourself. Like, maybe go try and go build a quick app and just kind of go try it really quick and see if you can do it, and then start to understand what types of questions these people would ask. Whoops, actually, I want to close that one. But going to like Google Groups, so if I bet let's even just search here. Search for topics, mobile dev. Oh, I search within. Go to groups. Mobile dev. So yeah, I mean, there's so many. I don't know. I wouldn't have a. I mean, I would just say let's go search for them. But even if you start to see like, okay, here's a mobile app development class at some college. Who knows where it is? And you can start to see who was posting on there. Maybe these are recent grads, and you can see somebody that get thanked 5 times for their responses. You'll know that they're probably pretty good. Looks like a lot of these are mobile app developer job posts. But yes, definitely there's a lot more mobile app communities out there to get into, and that's kind of, yeah, that's where you need to go and just dig in and find these things. I think they're good. I think as far as recruiters go, getting face to face with the people will probably be a lot more disarming. If you try and kind of ping them online, there's always this kind of, unfortunately, a bit of a skepticism about recruiters online. You're kind of like, where's this person coming from? There's sites like elance.com, freelancer, guru.com, coders.net, I think, or code the coders one. And there's definitely talent out there, but it's kind of, the pool gets diluted pretty quickly. And it sounds like, for some of the emails I got, you guys are definitely trying to get some more of the top talent out there, and you'll need someone with depth of experience. Someone asked me and they said, well, what about these guys? I see that they're a chef or they're a hotel manager for 10 years, and then they took 2 years off and went and got an iOS certification. They went and studied iOS and to build apps for 2 years. And I know people like this here in San Francisco. There's varying degrees of quality. Some of them pick it up really quick. Some of them just kind of like went through the motions and sort of know how to do it, but don't really have that kind of clever hacker's mindset. And that's typically what I would go look for, and when I've advised on hiring, is you want that generalist, someone that's not just kind of like, doesn't just have the degree in it, but they've got, you can sense it by reading about a person. Are they clever? Do they kind of fix things? Are they resourceful? Can they figure things out on the fly? Have they been in startup culture where they don't have time to make as many mistakes, or they have to fix things more quickly? Those are the kinds of types of skills I'd look for, and on these user groups you can kind of pick them out. But I've signed up for meetups, and then these recruiters definitely are scouring these meetup sites and then going to these meetups. I think if you can bridge the online to offline gap, you can be really successful as a recruiter. And like, because I get hit up and people will say, oh, we see you're going to be this party, can we meet up there? I say sure. Let's meet up, and you kind of just talk for a few minutes, and people are always much more friendly in person. Like, it's much easier to say no on email than to say no in person. And because you realize, you see someone smile, you look them in the eye, and you're like, all right, we can be, who knows, maybe we'll be friends. And you realize this person is not just a recruiter. You're obviously a human being with a lot more skills, and maybe you were a mobile app developer in a previous life, and now you hire them. So that's the kind of thing I think is important to bridge. Any other questions online? Feel free to jump in here.
Keep in mind for the future, you mentioned earlier a couple different things like security and testing for mobile applications and devices, and then you mentioned like application performance management, debugging. Is there anything we should keep an eye out just for the future and just for planning and that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the whole mobile landscape's going to evolve, and right now we're seeing a lot of, as any kind of computing industry evolves, the first thing that kind of, people build all the stuff first, and then just like early civilization, right? They're starting to build, they're putting up buildings, they're putting up bridges, and then suddenly that first hurricane hits or that first earthquake hits, and things start falling apart and breaking. And that's kind of where we're at with mobile right now. Is the early civilizations have been built, and security is always, as a developer, it's always kind of like an afterthought, unless it pretty much always is. You're like, oh yeah, we need to secure that stuff. Let's go get some security guys to do that. So I think security is going to just become an increasingly important thing on mobile, and the immaturity of mobile is going to drive that. A lot of the web, a lot of the hybrid native apps are very insecure. Android, it's intentionally insecure as an operating system because they wanted to let security vendors plug those holes. So I think you're going to see a lot more security startups in the Android space pop up, and/or existing ones hire on more. I think application performance management, or APM, with like New Relic doing it now, I think you're going to see a lot of the ALM type vendors, and/or like just the regular web performance management vendors, more, and the ALM vendors, which would be like Serena or Rational Tools or Mercury Tools bought by HP. Rational is bought by IBM. Those kinds of tools vendors that help people build software are going to, basically get much more involved in mobile pretty quickly here, because they still kind of haven't really taken it seriously. A lot of mobile stuff, sometimes I hear it get perceived as a hobby. They're toys. They're not that serious. But obviously, we're seeing that, again, it's still kind of early civilization. So yeah, let's try and build a 3-story house. Well, let's see how that works first, and then it starts falling apart, and we'll start to see skyscrapers get built more and more here, with better mobile apps. But I think security, performance management are some of the big things we'll start to see for that. As in the enterprise as well, things like data syncing, which has led to some more acquisitions I've heard of already. But like data sync, offline data storage, that kind of stuff will be more with those, experts on mobile data syncing. I think we'll get more demand from your guys. And then and then testing tools and mobile app testing, I think will increasingly, because a lot of companies are ramping up mobile teams. The economy's a little better, so they can, again, quality assurance is always a bit of an afterthought. And I think we'll start seeing more mobile QA engineers jobs being out there, because companies want to improve that mobile QA. I know like Twitter just bought Crashlytics. I'm friends with the guys who run a company called Criticism, and they do mobile crash management as well. They're about to, they're doing very well, and they're about to get much more successful. So these kinds of things I think are going to kind of keep growing, as far as just like, how do we now make mobile right? We've kind of been playing around with it. We've had some fun. Things have been getting started. We've seen some really cool stuff, and now I want to, like, I'm working with some airlines, and I've tried all their different mobile apps, and some of them, I load it the first time. It takes like 3 minutes to download my flight history and to get my account initiated on the mobile app. That should be unacceptable. The app should load up, and it should start pushing data down to it as I start to use it, but I shouldn't have to like sit there and wait for the spinning ball to get all my data for 2-3 minutes. It should kind of, start to be smarter about that. So, to parallel parallel mobile to web, we're about where the web was in 1997. And that's where we are with mobile right now. And so we'll see a lot of maturity in the next few years, as far as the different frameworks that are out there, and optimizing for performance and improving security on them. And I'll just kind of quickly mention here a couple of these other things. So like Y Combinator is an incubator here in Silicon Valley, but they have news.y Combinator. And so if you go in here, you can see these type of people posting on this stuff, and then you can go and check them out and see what they're doing on here. And again, this stuff's kind of hard work, but you can definitely find some of these rockstar developers hidden in here. And if you come after a person and say, hey, I saw that you posted on jQuery payments on Hacker News, and we're hiring right now a jQuery rockstar at, I don't know, at eBay or somewhere, and would you be interested to talk to us? And if you can pick these people out for some sort of thing they've done, and you found it online, they will talk to you. They will definitely hear what you have to say, because they say, hey, this person did their homework. They went and found me on Hacker News. I respect that. They're not just some of these other, 1,000 other recruiters that find me on LinkedIn and shoot me they cut and paste a job paragraph intro. They went and found me on one of these communities. They must actually care about what they're doing. They care about their job. They care about doing it right for their customer. So they're trying to find me the best person out there, and here I am. So. Okay.
What is your pet peeve, Alex, personally? Like, what is your pet peeve that recruiters do?
I mean, I can even probably like dig a couple up here, but it's just kind of those blanket requests that don't relate to anything maybe I've done or who I'm related to. Like here's one that's kind of annoying. Like a lot of them are coming out. So Macy's.com looking for an API developer management analytics job. For one thing, I think sometimes the tough, my title for my day job is API evangelist. And just like on Wall Street, if someone's called an analyst, there's analysts on Wall Street that are just out of college making $45,000 a year. There's some analysts on Wall Street making $1 million a year, and it's a much more prestigious role. And so it's definitely sometimes when I feel like they don't really look at and realize oh, you're you're at the top company in this space, and you have this role there. That's probably a much more prestigious role than being that same job at a big somewhere else where you're one of 50 people doing the same thing. So like Macy's hits me up, it's like, okay, why do I care about you? Why do I care about Macy's? Why would anything I've done in my past relate to anything that Macy's is going to be doing right now? So, first of all, she immediately comes after me like, are you or someone interested in a position? So it's like, okay, well, it's probably not going to be you, but can you help me out? Okay, well, what's in it for me? Like, why should I bother? Well, maybe I can help a friend get a job. Okay, why not? I don't know if that's possible, but why not offer a referral fee? Or these, partly these recruiters want to come and hang out, and it's like, well, okay, my friends. I earn my friends by accomplishments, and I earn my respect by doing things. And why should I share that elsewhere? And just kind of put this in terms of the person you're contacting. I mean, I'm sure Freda's great. She may work for you. You may know her. She's doing her job, and this is a tough job. The first thing I'll say, this is a very tough job. But it's like, okay, you're looking for a talented system support analyst to join. Okay, like, great. It's kind of like you need to talk more about the passions of the job and like why something I've done. Like, hey, I noticed you've done this in the past, and I noticed, or I noticed here's where you're at now. I hope I'm not, I hope my assumptions are correct, but it looks like this would be a jump up for you. This would be, a bigger deal for you. Even though, I think some of these recruiters need to be a little more humble. Like, they kind of just come at you like a salesperson, like, hey, I got something to sell you, and here it is. Versus like, here's this car. Well, I think you probably need a car with a folding back seat so you can fit your surfboards in the car. Well, then okay, all right, now I'll talk to that salesperson because they're like, relating to me and what I need. But it's like, I want to introduce you to my company, Macy's.com. Okay, great. Yeah, I've heard of Macy's. They're a big deal. I don't shop there, but it's like these kind of things. should work in talent acquisition. Of course you do. Great. Okay. I found you and noticed you could be a great fit. Why? Like, what? Who cares? Like, why? What did you notice about me? Like, flatter me, massage my ego, do something to like make me care about you, so that I'm gonna respond here, because otherwise it's like, yeah, sure. I mean, I could go probably do that job, I could probably succeed in that role, but why would that make me a great fit? Is this gonna, because Macy's so cool, because they're doing something really exciting, because, why? And that's kind of a lot of what I see from recruiters. They just kind of like come at me like, it's a great opportunity to join an established organization, massive growth. Okay, so is every other company that's hit me up lately. Like they all are. What's unique here? What makes this, what makes me special? And I mean, I know that no, developers in some way, I think the worst thing is when a developer feels like you're being bundled in as a, like, oh, it's just another dev. They're a dime a dozen. Let's just go hire some more devs. Because most developers, good ones, will think that they're artists. They think that they're, architects. They're designing things. They're building things. And those are the people you probably want to hire, but you need to kind of, respect them for that, and then give them that kind of credit. When like, here's just, please check out and submit your resume online. Well, first she'd ask me if me or someone I know. So okay, like, could you forward this over? This was clearly just like to me a pretty spammy email. I mean, when did I get this? To February 6th, yesterday. Yeah, geez. So I'm getting these all the time, right? It's like, okay, worthless, like delete, not interested. And so that's the kind of thing I'd say for recruiters. It's just on LinkedIn, and I'll tell you right now, the way I got my current job is the guy tweeted to me. He tweeted directly to me, and he's, which was flattering, right? You're like, oh, okay, this guy took the time. This recruiter is an in-house recruiter. He took the time to go figure out my Twitter account. He took the time to figure out how to use Twitter and to ping me on Twitter in a kind of public forum, which is kind of flattering. And you're like, okay, and my friend, this recruiter pinged my coworker the same way. I'm having a coffee with my friend. My friend goes like, what a douchebag, and I'm like, oh, hey, who knows? Like, maybe they're cool guys. Like, I'm gonna go check them out. And I went and got a really great job with them, and my friend's now looking for a job, sort of thing. I'll I'll send him over your way. But it's like you gotta kind of. I think that was an effective way. And then because he got me, I've brought 3 other friends over to Layer 7 and got them. They've all taken the jobs, and so you kind of get that. You get tap into that network, and I thought that was a pretty effective technique. Is tweeting to that. So he tweeted to me, found me in a different forum, not just LinkedIn, because developers right now are getting these almost every day, right? And so you don't want to just be one in a dozen. If you can get creative, if you show up at that, the gentleman here in San Francisco, hopefully I'll meet you in person tonight. But come by his party, right? Next thing you know, you're hanging out. We'll talk. I'm 3 other developer friends of mine come by. You give them your card. Turns out one of them is looking possibly for a job, and then there you go. So that's a kind of serendipity, I guess I'd call it, of being out in the world and trying these new things, and getting out there. And I mean, hey, why not even try building a mobile app yourself? Get some problems, get stuck, post a question on Stack Overflow, and somebody responds and helps you out, and you say, hey, by the way, that was really helpful. I really appreciate it. And you seem like you really know what you're doing. I'm hiring for these kinds of jobs right now, my day job, for Apex. Maybe we should talk. Let me know if you're interested. That kind of stuff. You can get these more organic, natural introductions. It'll be much more productive, I think. Is this helpful? Sorry, I just pull up. I mean, I figured this is.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you.
This is real. Happened yesterday. And I will say, not interested to her. There you go. No opinion.
Okay, yeah.
And I'll accept her request. Well, I don't know her. No opinion. Send. So that's how I respond to those kinds of requests.
Awesome. Good to know. Thank you, Alex.
Sure. And it looks like yesterday I got this. I may have been sitting next to a buddy who's a freelancer, and I forwarded it to him. I'm like, hey, maybe you want this. Okay. Any other questions for now, or we can wrap it up for today? So I will say, guys, anyone on there who I really appreciated the questions that were sent to me. Obviously, you can tell I got changed gears a little bit here today, and I'm totally open to just helping you guys get what you want from me and how I can help you the best. So please shoot over more stuff to me. Connect to me on LinkedIn. Don't send me job requests, but feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn if anyone from Apex does. Happy to accept, and would love any feedback. Tell me if I'm bad or if I blabbed about something that wasn't useful to you. Tell me, and feel free to just shoot me more questions by email that I can make sure I cover next time more in depth. If you want to see building an iOS app, if you want me to go through some of that stuff, we can. I've got an agenda for next time, which will be, I can pull that up here. Shoot. I had the agenda. That was today's agenda. And the other one, for the next time, I'll just cover here what we'll be covering next week. Here before we drop off, make sure you guys can. I'll tell you what we're covering next time, and then if you wanted to kind of prepare any questions for it, here we go. Okay. So for next Tuesday at the same time, we will be going more in depth on the actual native platforms. Today we kind of covered more of the hybrid stuff. We'll look at things like why Obama only uses a BlackBerry and still does. I'll be looking kind of more, I'll get probably more technical here, go into just kind of explaining what is an IDE versus a framework. I'll show you Xcode, I'll show you Eclipse, we'll spin up a quick iOS app. I'll get more in depth on some of these things like testing and basic debugging that are used, and then I showed you Tigsy today, but I can show you Accelerator just so you guys get kind of the full overview of how these things work. So that's what's on schedule for next Tuesday. So again, feel free to shoot me emails, find me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to connect and let me know how I can help you guys more. Okay.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Sure.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend. I'll talk to you on Tuesday.